Joining me today to share his insight into this weekend's Greek elections is Peter Westaway, Chief Economist at Vanguard Asset Management. Peter, it's nice to speak to you. Now, some are hailing these elections as the most important in modern Greek time. Meanwhile, the European Union seems divided whether to build up or play down expectations of its summit in 2 weeks. Do you think the summit trumps elections as the most crucial factor affecting the future of the Eurozone, and what are you expecting from it?
Well, I probably thought that the elections last month were the most important in Greek history, but no, I think I do agree that what happens this weekend is incredibly important, both for the future of Greece and for the euro area more generally, and perhaps for the global economy. The importance of the summit is going to be partly affected by what happens at the Greek election. I mean, if, for example, the Greek election turns out a result where there's a majority in favour of the sort of anti-austerity measures, then the summit may actually be too late, and policymakers may need to move even more quickly. I mean, even before the Greek election, we're seeing Spanish and Italian yields getting up to pretty high levels, and so we may need to see a preemptive move. But so, I think what the summit is going to need to do, whether it's at the summit or a few days in advance, is really be much more explicit and maybe set out a more accelerated timetable about what the vision is for the euro area, how they're going to make it sustainable.
Some banks have emergency plans in place in case the market collapses. What do you think the aftershocks of the elections will be in regards to markets, and what do you think the banks will cope?
So I think it's a real problem for them, and I think it's about making a very quick decision about whether Greece is going to leave the euro and let it go, and then making a very clear statement in terms of all the other policies that you can do to do with providing financing for governments, to make it very clear that you will stand behind, the policymakers will stand behind the other countries and not let them leave the euro. I think in a way the policies are designed to prevent bank runs are almost too late. You've almost lost the battle if that's the battle you're fighting. You've got to really solve the problem at a higher level than that.
Tsipras has not backed off his threat to call a halt to budget cuts he says are leading the country towards collapse. Peter, what do you think a win for Syriza would mean for Greece?
I mean, what Syriza would like it to mean would be a renegotiation of the Greek loans from the EU and the IMF, which would then involve a more protracted fiscal tightening, a slowdown in the structural reform process. I think in reality the scope for that type of loosening of policy is very little, mainly because there are other countries that are doing a lot of austerity, and Greece so far has sort of fallen short. So I think what it will probably mean is that the EU will stop funding the Greek government. I mean, there's basically three things that the policymakers in Europe can do to Greece in terms of their financing. There's the money coming from the EU to finance the government. There's money coming from them to finance the debt repayments, and I don't think they'll cut that money off because, in effect, the EU are paying themselves, so they've got no interest in cutting that off. And then the third thing that they can do is that the ECB can withdraw liquidity support from the Greek banks. Now, again, that is a very political decision to do that, and I think that step would only be taken by the ECB if it had been universally agreed that Greece was going to leave the euro. And I think that's something that, even though ex ante everybody's threatening that, I think the costs of Greece leaving the euro are so great that even if Syriza lost the election, I think policymakers on both sides are going to do everything they can to try and prevent that happening. So, I think a lot's going to depend on how much flexibility there is on Syriza's part. I think over the last week or so we've started to see a little bit of backsliding in terms of just how hard-lined that government would be. I don't think they've got nearly as much manoeuvre as they'd like to think.
And finally, at the moment, what do you think the outcome of these elections will be?
I think there will be a slim majority in favour of if not New Democracy on its own, I think we will get a position where New Democracy and some of the other pro-EU parties, PASOK, and some of the smaller moderate parties may be able to form a coalition government that can hold the line. But, I mean, I have to say my confidence in that prediction is not at all great, and if Syriza won the election, I wouldn't fall off my chair in surprise either.
Peter, thank you for your insight today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but stay at Dukascopy TV for all the latest market updates.